Oh, you're here. Good. I've got another betrayal story for you. Sit down. I used to think losing someone you loved was the worst pain imaginable. I was wrong. The real pain comes when they don't just leave, they take everything that made you who you are and leave you wondering if you ever mattered at all. My name's Ryan Miller, 32 years old. I lived in the city, had a steady job as a project manager, and a girlfriend I thought I'd marry someday. Jenna and I had been together for 3 years. Life wasn't perfect, but it was stable, and stability was something I valued. Or at least I used to. That morning, I came home early. I'd been working late nights to finish a big project, and I wanted nothing more than to crawl into bed next to Jenna. But when I opened the apartment door, my key turned in silence. No smell of coffee, no hum of the heater, just a hollow emptiness of a place already abandoned. The couch cushions were gone. The TV stands empty. The kitchen was stripped bare except for one chipped mug in the sink. Every drawer, every closet, gutted. At first, I thought we'd been robbed. My heart raced as I moved from room to room, calling her name. Jenna? Nothing. And then I saw it. The only thing she left behind, a folded piece of paper on the counter, a bank receipt, withdrawal, the entire balance of our joint account. My chest tightened. I scrambled for my phone, dialed her number, straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. I didn't even have time to process when a knock hit the door, sharp, deliberate. Ryan Miller? 2 uniformed officers stood there. For a split second, relief. Maybe they knew what happened. Maybe they caught whoever did this. But then one officer pulled out a folder, and I saw my name in bold across a charge sheet. Mr. Miller, you're under investigation for credit fraud. We'll need you to come down to the station. My stomach dropped. Fraud? No, there's a mistake. Sir, your signature appears on several fraudulent applications. You can either cooperate now, or we'll have to escort you. They didn't handcuff me, but they didn't need to. Walking past my neighbors, seeing their curious stares, felt worse than chains. I spent hours in a gray interview room while they flipped through documents, loans, credit cards, lines of credit I'd never applied for. Every one of them had my name, my information, and my forged signature. Looks bad, Mr. Miller, the detective said. Care to explain how your girlfriend, Jenna Hayes, has copies of these documents? That was the first time I understood. Jenna hadn't just left. She had set me up. I stumbled out of the station past midnight, numb, carrying a stack of paperwork. I called my best friend Mark, voicemail. Tried Rachel, nothing. Tried half a dozen others. Silence. It wasn't until the next morning that one of them texted me back. Don't contact me again. I won't take sides in this. You need help. I didn't get it then. Later, I'd find out Jenna had been busy long before she disappeared, telling everyone I'd been controlling, abusive, and dangerous. She spun the story so tight that by the time she vanished, people were ready to believe anything. I thought it couldn't get worse. But life has a cruel way of digging deeper. When I showed up at work 2 days later, ready to at least bury myself in something normal, I walked straight into whispers. People avoided my eyes, and conversations stopped when I passed. My boss called me into his office. Ryan, we've reviewed certain matters. Until this is resolved, we'll have to suspend you, effective immediately. He didn't even look at me, just slid an envelope across the desk. Inside, I found a reassignment memo. All my projects, the work I'd spent years building, handed off to someone else. And not just someone. Marcus, my rival, the smug bastard who always circled like a shark whenever Jen was around. I caught him standing by the glass wall of the office, talking to 2 executives, using my presentation notes. My notes. He smiled when our eyes met, like he'd been waiting for this moment. Guessed the company needed someone reliable, he said casually as I passed. Reliable. That word cut deeper than anything Jenna had done, because it meant my career, my reputation, my years of grinding. They were gone. All of it. I walked out of that building carrying a cardboard box with my things. But what I was really carrying was the truth. Jenna hadn't left me by accident. She had dismantled my life piece by piece, handed it to someone else, and left me standing in the ruins. That night, sitting in my car surrounded by eviction notices and legal summons, I realized I wasn't heartbroken. I was something worse. I was erased. That night, I sat in my car outside the empty apartment, eviction notice in hand, wondering how fast a life could collapse. The next morning, reality set in. Survival wasn't optional. It was all I had left. The landlord didn't even give me a full week. You're behind on rent, your name's a liability, and the neighbors don't want trouble, he said flatly, sliding the papers across the counter. My signature wasn't on anything anymore, but it was on enough forged loans to bury me. By the end of that week, the locks were changed, and I was officially homeless. At first, I couch surfed. A friend from college let me crash on his pullout for a few days, but when Jenna's rumors reached him, he asked me to leave. Another friend offered the floor of her studio, then suddenly couldn't risk it. After the fifth rejection, I stopped asking. Nights turned into parking lot slumbers, curled in the back seat of my car with a jacket for a blanket. Every morning I woke up with stiff joints and the taste of metal in my mouth, but I was still breathing, and that had to count for something. Food and bills didn't wait for pity. I picked up whatever jobs I could find. Warehouse shifts, night deliveries, janitorial work. Anything that paid cash or minimum wage under the table. My hands blistered, my back screamed, and I lost count of how many times I walked into work dead-eyed, running on gas station coffee. All that money went straight into two things: cheap food to keep myself alive, and lawyer fees to keep myself out of prison. The first time Daniel showed up, I thought maybe I wasn't completely alone. My little brother had always been protective of me, even when we were kids. But when I opened the door to the cafe where we agreed to meet, I could see in his face anger, disappointment, disgust. "Tell me it isn't true," he snapped, before I even sat down. I swallowed. "What part?" "That you put everything in Jenna's name. That you forged accounts." "That you..." He cut himself off, shaking his head. "Ryan," she came to me crying, "said you hit her. Said you drained her accounts when she tried to leave." I almost laughed, but it came out as something closer to a cough. "Daniel, do you hear yourself? She's the one who drained my accounts. She set me up." His jaw tightened. "Do you know how insane that sounds? She has evidence. The police. The police have forged papers." I snapped back, louder than I meant to. The cafe went quiet, eyes flicking toward us. I lowered my voice. "She played all of us, Daniel. You included." But he didn't believe me. Not then. He just stood, muttering that he hoped I'd get help before walking out. Watch him leave hurt worse than sleeping in my car. Because Jenna hadn't just stolen my money or my apartment. She'd stolen my brother's trust. The legal storm only grew worse. Every week brought another summons, another letter demanding payment for debts I hadn't signed. Detective Harris, the one handling my fraud case, wasn't cruel, but he wasn't my savior either. "Look, Miller," he said one afternoon across his cluttered desk, "on paper, this looks bad. Multiple loans, consistent details, and even your work history attached. But..." He tapped the corner of one document. "The signatures are too clean, almost too consistent. That's not normal. Real signatures vary slightly. These don't." I leaned forward, heart pounding. "So you believe me?" He gave me a look I'll never forget, equal parts weary and cautious. "I believe there's something off. But proving forgery? That's uphill. Unless you can find evidence tying her directly to this, you'll be fighting shadows." That was the first sliver of hope I'd had in weeks. If there were cracks in her story, I could find them. So I started looking. In between 12-hour shifts, between sleeping in my car, I dug old emails, shared documents, even printed forms she left in boxes I hadn't packed fast enough before the eviction. And slowly, I began to see the pattern. The same mistakes repeated across the paperwork. Wrong dates. Identical strokes in supposedly separate signatures. A form filed the same day I was verifiably out of town for work. It wasn't much, but it was something. Proof that her web of lies wasn't flawless. Most nights, I collapsed onto the driver's seat of my car with my back aching and eyes burning from hours of scanning documents under a flashlight. But the exhaustion was different now. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was preparation. She'd taken everything from me. But maybe, just maybe, she hadn't covered her tracks as perfectly as she thought. And if there was one thing I learned living out of that car, it was this. When you've already lost everything, the only thing left to do is fight. By the third month, exhaustion felt like my skin. But the one thing keeping me alive was the thought that if she could destroy me, I could find a way to fight back. The court became my new reality. Every week, sometimes twice a week, I was back in that sterile courthouse under flickering lights, sitting across from Jenna. She always arrived polished, hair done, voice soft, hands trembling just enough to look fragile. She knew how to play the role. Every time she spoke, she painted herself as a victim. According to her, I was manipulative, reckless, and dangerous. She said I drained our accounts to punish her for leaving. She claimed she was only protecting herself by filing complaints, by moving money, by transferring everything before she walked away. And the worst part? People believed her. I'd look around the courtroom and see heads nodding at her performance, the way she dabbed her eyes, the way her voice cracked just enough to sound sincere. She wasn't just testifying, she was acting. And for months, it worked. I sat there with nothing but a stack of papers, trying to defend myself against a ghost story she told better than I could disprove. My lawyer warned me to keep calm, to let the facts speak. But facts alone don't win hearts. Every time I opened my mouth, I felt like I was drowning in her version of me. Then one night, I caught it. I'd been sitting in the back seat of my car, flashlight balanced on my shoulder, flipping through duplicates of the loan forms. My eyes were bloodshot, my hands shaking, but there was the same signature, down to the exact pixel of the curve, copied onto 3 different contracts. I walked into court the next day with a folder full of highlighted comparisons. My lawyer stood, voice steady, and slid the papers to the judge. Your Honor, real signatures vary. No human hand can replicate an exact stroke perfectly across multiple documents. But these? Identical, because they were traced, cut, and pasted. They're forgeries. The courtroom shifted. For the first time, the whispers weren't against me. They were against her. Jenna tried to cry her way through it, claiming I'd somehow planted the documents, but the seed of doubt was there. That was the first crack in her armor, and it gave me enough air to breathe. Around that time, Maya stepped back into my life. We'd been friends years ago, drifted apart when Jenna came around. Not because of a fight, but because Jenna didn't like me spending time with her. Jenna always said Maya was jealous, toxic. I believed it then. But after everything blew up, Maya texted me out of the blue. I heard what happened. I don't buy her story. You don't have to go through this alone. I wanted to ignore her. Pride told me I didn't need saving, but the truth was I had nowhere left to turn. That night, I found myself on her couch, too tired to fight her kindness. She didn't pity me. She didn't sugarcoat it either. She's good, Maya said, scrolling through Jenna's old social posts, emails, and everything she'd dig up. But people that good at lying, they slip. We just have to find where. For the first time in months, I wasn't alone. She became my anchor, giving me food when I skipped meals, pushing me to keep digging when I wanted to quit. Some nights, she even dragged me away from the files, saying, "You need to sleep if you're going to win." Her place became my refuge, even if I still spent some nights in the car out of shame. Weeks dragged into months, but piece by piece, the case shifted. More forged documents. More evidence that didn't line up. Detective Harris even admitted, quietly, that my theory was holding water. "Keep at it, Miller," he said. "You're closer than you think." And then it happened, my first real victory. The judge dismissed the largest fraud charge against me, citing insufficient evidence and serious concerns about document authenticity. It didn't clear everything, but it was enough to stop the bleeding. For the first time in half a year, I walked out of the courthouse feeling like I wasn't drowning. I thought I'd have a moment to breathe. I didn't, because waiting outside the courthouse steps was Marcus. Immaculate suit, smug grin, and Jenna hanging off his arm like a trophy. He was thriving. Living in the condo I'd once looked at with Jenna, using the contacts she stole from my files. "Careful, Ryan," he said smoothly as we crossed paths. "One win doesn't mean you're back. Sometimes it's better to stay down rather than embarrass yourself trying to climb again." He didn't even look at me when he said it. He just smiled past me, shaking hands with executives who wouldn't return my calls anymore. In that moment, my small victory tasted like ash, because I realized Jenna hadn't just betrayed me for herself. She'd handed my entire life to him, but she also handed me something else without realizing it, a reason to fight harder. Clearing my name didn't bring my life back. The world still looked at me as the man who lost everything. So I decided to stop chasing what I'd lost and build something new. The first thing I realized was that the industry I came from had no room for me anymore. I sent out resumes by the dozen, called old contacts, and showed up to networking events. Every time, the answer was the same: polite rejection, or worse, silence. A few were blunt enough to say it out loud. "Your name's a liability, Ryan. Nobody wants a drama." That was when it hit me. I wasn't just unemployed. I was blacklisted. Jenna's lies, Marcus's influence, my public humiliation, they'd all done their work. My old career wasn't just paused. It was dead. I almost gave up. But then I remembered something. Jenna hadn't been subtle. Before she disappeared, she'd stolen my files, my research, my half-finished projects. And she gave them to Marcus, who now strutted around the city like a genius. But those ideas were mine. I knew them inside and out. So I did the only thing left to me. I built something of my own. A friend from college, Brian, had a garage he was willing to let me use. Concrete floor, leaky roof, and a single desk that wobbled every time I leaned on it. That became my office. I printed business cards with money I didn't have, and I started calling myself a consultant. It was pathetic, really, me sitting in a freezing garage, one cheap lamp overhead, pretending I ran a company. The humiliation was constant. I pitched to anyone who would listen: local businesses, startups, even old colleagues who didn't hang up on me. 99 out of 100 said no. Some laughed. One told me I should get used to obscurity. But that 1% who said yes, they gave me just enough oxygen to keep going. My first client was a mom-and-pop store trying to digitize their sales. They paid me less than I used to spend on groceries in a week. But I threw myself into it like it was a Fortune 500 contract. Nights bled into mornings as I worked, spreadsheets, code, presentations, teaching myself skills I'd never needed before. Every hour I wasn't working for a client, I was studying, tutorials, books, free courses. I devoured them like my life depended on it, because in a way, it did. Maya became my sounding board. Some nights, when I was too exhausted to think, she'd sit with me in that cold garage, helping me sort proposals or proofread pitches. She reminded me that this grind, as humiliating as it felt, was still progress. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, the rejections turned into meetings. Meetings turned into contracts. The contracts weren't huge, but they were real. Word spread. Ryan Miller wasn't finished. Ryan Miller delivered. And for the first time in 2 years, people were calling me, not to drag me into court, not to accuse me, but to hire me. Still, everyone carried a shadow. No matter how much progress I made, the world still whispered the name Jenna behind my back. She wasn't there, but she was everywhere. In the sideways looks, in the cautious tones, in the hesitation before someone signed with me. I knew it would take years to erase that stain completely. One evening, just as I was shutting down my laptop in the garage, I got a call from Daniel. I almost didn't answer, but something in me, maybe habit, maybe curiosity, made me swipe. "Ryan," he said. His voice was tight, awkward, like he didn't know where to start. I owe you an apology." Silence stretched on my end. He went on. "I shouldn't have believed her. I see it now. Everything she said about you, about what you did, it doesn't add up. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." I closed my eyes, leaning back in the chair. I'd spent so long wishing for that moment, for someone, anyone, to say they believed me. But instead of relief, all I felt was anger simmering under my ribs. "Sorry doesn't give me back 2 years of my life." I said, "Finally, I know." His voice cracked. "I know, but I want to make it right." I wanted to forgive him. I wanted to reach through the phone and rewind to the days when he had my back no matter what. But betrayal leaves scars, and his silence, his choice to believe her, had cut almost as deep as Jenna's lies. So I didn't forgive him. Not then. I just told him, "We'll see," and hung up. As I sat there in the dim garage, surrounded by the hum of my cheap equipment, I realized something. This was my life now. Rebuilt from ash, patched together with scraps, fueled by rage and stubbornness. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't easy, but it was mine, and no one could take it from me again. By the second year, I no longer introduced myself as the man Jenna left. I had an office, a small team, and something even Marcus couldn't steal, a reputation rebuilt from the ground up. It started small. My name floated through the city, one referral at a time. A local business owner told another, "Call Ryan, he delivers." Word spread that I wasn't just desperate for work. I was dependable, relentless, and meticulous. The kinds of clients who wouldn't have given me a glance 2 years earlier were suddenly calling, asking for quotes. The garage was too cramped now, too cold in winter and stifling in summer. I signed a lease on a modest office downtown, a second-floor walk-up above a pawn shop. The carpet was threadbare, the windows drafty. But when I hung the cheap sign that read Miller Consulting, it felt like staking my flag back into the ground. For the first time since Jenna's betrayal, I felt like I was walking into a place that belonged to me. I hired 2 part-timers, both younger guys hungry for a shot. They worked out a pair of mismatched desks, fueled by coffee and my relentless drive. Sometimes I caught them whispering about my past. The old story still circled, but then they'd see the hours I put in, the way I fought tooth and nail for every client, and the whispers died off. Action spoke louder than rumors. The biggest milestone wasn't professional, though. It was personal. I signed a lease for a 1-bedroom apartment. Nothing special, cracked walls, squeaky floors, but it was mine. No borrowed couch, no backseat of my car, no sleeping with one eye open. Just a door I could lock, a place no one could take from me. That first night, sitting on the floor with a pizza box and no furniture, I felt a kind of peace I hadn't known in years. Maya came over a few days later, carrying a potted plant. "Every office needs something alive in it," she said, dropping on my desk. She'd been with me through every stage of this rebuild. The garage nights, the rejection emails, the exhaustion that nearly broke me. Now she looked at the office with a smile, but her eyes carried something heavier. "You've done it," she said softly. "You proved them all wrong." "But Ryan," she hesitated, "don't let this harden you. You can't carry bitterness forever. It'll eat you alive." I brushed it off with a laugh, but her words lingered, because she was right. Bitterness had fueled me, kept me moving when I wanted to quit. But I knew if I let it run my life forever, I'd just be another version of Jenna, someone who thrived on destruction. I promised myself I'd never let her win twice. Family reconciliation came more slowly. Daniel reached out again and again, texts, calls, invitations. He showed up at the office once, standing awkwardly in the doorway while my team worked behind me. His guilt was written all over his face. "I was wrong," he said, "about everything. I should have believed you." I didn't yell. I didn't push him out. But I didn't embrace him either. The wound was still raw. I told him I needed time, and he nodded, accepting that the brother he betrayed wasn't ready to forgive yet. Months passed. The business grew. I wasn't rich, but I was stable, steady. Clients paid on time. I even took a weekend off here and there, something unthinkable in those early days. The ghost of Jenna still hovered sometimes in whispers and sideways glances, but I'd learned to live with it. I wasn't defined by her lies anymore. For the first time in years, I felt in control. My life was mine again, and that's when the past came knocking. It started with a phone call I almost ignored. Unknown number, late evening, just as I was finishing paperwork. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another call, same number. Then a text. Ryan, please. I need to see you. It's Jenna. I stared at the screen, my chest tight. For 2 years, she'd been a ghost. A name I spat like poison. A story I carried like a scar. Now she was real again, reaching out from the shadows. Part of me wanted to delete the message, to pretend I never saw it. But another part, the part that lived through the ashes, the courts, the grind, knew this was inevitable. You can't bury betrayal that deep without it clawing its way back to the surface. I didn't answer right away. I sat in that office, the hum of the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and realized something. No matter how far I'd come, no matter what I'd built, my story with Jenna wasn't finished. And whether I liked it or not, the next chapter was about to begin. It was a Tuesday when she appeared again, the same woman who'd burned my life to the ground. But now, Jenna wasn't untouchable. She was shaking, broke, and hollow-eyed. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing a contract, when the front door creaked open. My assistant poked her head in. There's a woman here to see you. She says it's important. I looked up and time froze. Jenna stood in the doorway, her once polished style, reduced to frayed clothes and streaked mascara. She wasn't the woman who walked out with my life tucked under her arm. She was a shadow of her own arrogance. Ryan, she said softly, like we were old friends. Please, can we talk? My jaw clenched. You got 2 minutes. She sat across from me, fidgeting with her hands. For a moment, she didn't look like the architect of my downfall. She just looked desperate. Marcus threw me out, she blurted. He found someone else. I don't have anywhere to go. The creditors are after me. I need help. Her eyes welled with tears, rehearsed or real, I couldn't tell. I leaned back in my chair. Help. That's rich. I know what I did was wrong, she rushed. But I was scared. You were working all the time, and Marcus, he promised things you couldn't. I thought I was doing what was best for me, but it blew up in my face. I have nothing, Ryan. Nothing. The irony of those words almost made me laugh. I have nothing. That was the exact state she'd left me in. I let the silence stretch until she started to squirm. So what? I finally asked. You think I'm going to swoop in, save you after everything you did? Her eyes hardened. The tears dried up fast. If you don't, I'll have no choice but to use what I have left. There was the real Jenna, not begging, threatening. She leaned in, her voice sharp now. I still have the originals, Ryan, the forged documents, the ones you barely crawled out from under. I can make one call, send one email, and your whole little empire falls apart. You might have fooled the courts once, but you won't survive again. For a second, the old fear gripped me, the same panic I'd felt in that interrogation room 2 years ago. But it didn't last, because this wasn't 2 years ago. I smiled, slowly, coldly. Jenna, I said, opening the drawer of my desk. I pulled out a thick folder, dropping it on the table with a heavy thud. She flinched. What's that? She asked, her voice cracking. 2 years' worth of documentation. I said, every lie, every forged signature, every fraudulent transfer, witness statements, email trails, bank logs, Even Marcus's text bragging about how you handed in my files. I've been building this since the day you left. Her face drained of color. If you try to play that card again, I continued, I'll bury you in it. Not just in court, publicly. Everyone will know who you really are. No more victim act. No more lies. Just Jenna Hayes, the con artist who tried to frame her boyfriend, ruin his life, and got caught. She shook her head violently. You wouldn't. I would. I cut her off because you taught me something. Mercy is a luxury I don't owe you. The room went quiet except for the faint hum of the fluorescent light. Jenna's shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of her all at once, replaced by something I'd never seen in her before. True fear. Her lips trembled. Ryan, please. I have nowhere else to go. I'll do anything. Just don't let me fall. I stood, pushing the folder back into the drawer. You already fell, Jenna. You just finally hit the ground. Her tears spilled, but I didn't feel satisfaction. Not rage, just clarity. She had left me with nothing, but that nothing had forged me into someone she could never touch again. I walked to the door, opened it wide, and waited. She looked at me one last time, as if begging for a trace of the man who used to love her. But that man had died the day she cleaned out our apartment and handed my life to Marcus. She shuffled past me, broken, her heels clicking on linoleum like nails in her own coffin. The door shut behind her with a finality I felt in my bones. I exhaled, steady, untouchable, because in the end, her downfall wasn't my revenge. It was her reflection. Hey, what would you have done if someone drained your life and came crawling back years later? Do you think Ryan should have shown her mercy, or was walking away the only answer? Drop your take in the comments, and if you want more stories like this, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one.